So thank you for coming to this conversation. I've been asked to frame the talks from 4 wonderful and, in some cases, courageous panelists by placing this moment into a historical context of women's resistance. But I'm going to pause as people come in, and maybe someone could station themselves and ask people to come in quietly. Thank you. So if there's a lesson from history for us today, it's that women not only resist, we lead the resistance, and resistance creates openings that create the future. When Donald Trump won the presidency for the second time, his delusional rage and cruelty towards people who are female, LGBTQ or gender diverse, Black, Indigenous, disabled, neurodiverse, and or immigrants were well known. It was clear that we were going to be dragged backwards in a war against humanity, coexistence, and against the planet itself, a war for some horrifying imaginary great again. I wondered as a historian how far back this abuser-in-chief who thinks he's anointed would go. Whether he would succeed in ending the educational, workplace, and reproductive rights won in the 1970s, which is my lifetime. He and his co-abusers are trying. Then I wondered whether the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts were at risk. They are. Even modest gains of 100+ years ago, such as minor regulation of corporations and universal voting rights, are now at risk. It's clear that the Constitution itself is at risk, and settled laws such as birthright citizenship and due process are no longer bedrock. This catapults us back to the late 1700s. And then there are the right-wing fundamentalists such as Opus Dei and J.D. Vance's natalist movement, preaching women's duty to have babies, a view rooted in medieval ethno-religious cleansing by the Catholic Church. Trump and MAGA would drag us very far back indeed. Using current technology, Palantir, drone warfare, and attacks on free speech. And this is technologically new, but it's really ancient in the simple message. Shut up, cower, and obey. As a white woman with considerable privilege, I found myself walking some new ground, but it's old ground to communities of color and to sexuality and gender conflict. First I thought, oh, our new alpha, patriarchal, oligarchical, white supremacist leaders are not going to dialogue with us. Then they want us to just shut up. Remember Quiet Piggy? Wow, they don't even pretend to care about us. There's not even a pretend here. Okay, they are fine if we suffer. They've dropped all pretense. They want us to suffer. Dang, they are deliberately planning our suffering. Fascist style. Yikes, they actually want us dead. Finally, they're trying to kill us. The abuses of power put us all at risk, but some people are more at risk more immediately than others. That's the same old to communities of color, which lead resistance in a million ways. So we need to follow the true leaders in protesting every ICE death, every illegal detention, every racist attack. There are a lot. But women resist, and resistance creates openings that create the future. Our nation's history has 2 threads. One is dominance over people, animals, and the earth itself. This thread encourages greed, exploitation, and violence to achieve power. It predates corporate capitalism, but corporate capitalism expresses it perfectly. The other, more ancient thread encourages a web of understanding that leads to cooperation and collaboration and creativity to attain power. Both threads coexist in many cultures and in our own psyches, but the dominant story of U.S. history is more familiar to many of us, though it's not always told critically or honestly. For example, it took just 3 days for Christopher Columbus's first visit to the Caribbean to turn violent. And though the enslavement of indigenous peoples was widespread in the Americas, every day people fought back. We're not often taught about 400 years of indigenous resistance, and the history of white supremacy and African enslavement seldom mentions creative, constant resistance by enslaved people. Resistance opens possibility. The determination, labor, and joy of indigenous and black women helped people and cultures survive European colonization with its rigid gender roles and brutal violence. European-descended women also resisted. Puritan laws and court records make it clear, for example, that many women and men were of non-conforming genders and sexualities. New Englanders of the early 18th century also resisted harsh capitalism by posing a positive view of humans, our souls, and our purposes on earth. Most importantly, black resistance sparked and led the biggest movement for social change in U.S. history until today, the movement to abolish slavery. Black women and men stood up, white women and men followed. The resistance was creative, literary, artistic, political, religious, financial, and eventually military. Resistance works. Abolitionists achieved important aims. They also left much work undone, which brings us to MAGA. The far right has effectively used new tools to gain power for old oppression, but we also have new tools. Using them is not optional. And we have a powerful reality that women lead and have led every resistance movement and been behind the scenes making sandwiches, writing legal briefs, planning march routes, doing the sound check. We have this other ancient powerful tool that MAGA calls wokeness. We can weave understanding into cooperation and creativity. We resist by being who we are, bringing what we specially can contribute, and building community to collaborate both for survival and for making meaning and art. Bread and roses, too. We go farthest together. We hope you will use today to get inspired, to meet others, trade phone numbers, start good trouble, and play or continue to play a historical part, doing what women have always done, resisting and leading resistance to build what's next. So we are going to have a really fabulous group of people do some talking, but we also wanted to give people who came a little bit of chance to tell us where you are and what you're thinking. So if you look over to the side, there's a little piece of paper over there that says agree, and on that side there's a little piece of paper that says disagree. And we're not going to make you get up and move around, but we want you to respond to two statements by pointing. If you totally disagree, you're going to point over there. If you totally agree, you're going to point over here. And if you're somewhere in the middle, you're going to point somewhere in the middle. And then we're going to ask people who take the different positions to tell us a little bit about why they point where they're pointing. So we can just kind of see who's here and let you talk a little bit. So does everybody understand? It's a simple point, okay? So, and the panelists can do this too. So the first, it's kind of an opinion group. The first statement is, this may be very generational, we're waiting to see. U.S. women will achieve full equality within our lifetime. U.S. women will achieve full equality within our lifetime. If you totally agree, totally disagree. Okay, so we're going to start with the people who agree. So disagreeers, put your hand down, and let's just ask a couple people who are agreeing. Actually, well, let's start with the audience. So a couple people who agree. Tell us why you're pointing to agree.
Well, okay.
Briefly.
Okay, yes. Hi, I'm Josh Maynard, and I live in Petaluma. I agree. I guess I'm just an eternal optimist, and I just founded a group called Veterans Against Tyranny that we're trying to nationally mobilize, and I've got some great ideas, and I think we can do everything we need to do. The people are out there. We just need to unite, and so I agree. Let's get after it.
Okay, somebody else who agrees. Let's have somebody else who agrees who's not a speaker. Anybody else agree? Wow, not too many people agree. Okay, what is actor? Kimberly. Why are you agreeing? They're bringing you on.
I think that MAGA has awoken the great sleeping bear. We're going to place it, and I think it's just going to keep going and going, and I think the pendulum's swinging the other way.
Yeah.
of you agrees? Molly, I see you, but I'm trying to get an audience member. But, okay, no, she's pointing at something. Okay, Molly, tell us why you agree.
I agree because I've seen the kind of change we can do.
I agree because I've seen the kind of change that has just happened in my lifetime. Before that sleeping giant, that invisible in part has awoken. People didn't know. They really didn't know that what tyranny was or authoritarianism, because as Americans we had it so good. And now I believe that all he has to do is keep doing the incredibly god-awful blank things that happen and more people. And all we need to do, well, we need to do a lot of things, but we need to talk to each other and work with each other, and we can do it.
Okay, that's inspiring, but a lot of people, actually the agrees were the minority in this room. So somebody right up here disagreed. Do you want to tell us why you disagreed? Yeah, go ahead, in the hat, yeah.
I disagree. And the reason I disagree is because I think of Phyllis Schlafly and what she did with the ERA. So unless women stand up and have a loud voice, we're not going to go anywhere. So I will disagree if people are quiet, but I will agree if we stand up loudly and say enough is enough. Thank you.
Very good. All right, so right in the middle. Somebody else who disagreed, who pointed this way. Tell us why. Yeah, go ahead.
Talk radio.
Thank you, Elaine, for doing the mic.
It's difficult to understand you for some reason. But what I'd like to say is we need to unify. Standing up, absolutely. Write your senators, representatives, write even the president if you know how to talk to him. Anyone that is in a position of power, and encourage them to stand up. It takes courage, and we all have it.
So you disagree that women will achieve full equality in your lifetime?
Excuse me?
You disagree that women will achieve full equality in your lifetime?
I'm having trouble understanding you.
Okay. I'm sorry. We'll go on.
No, I'd like to hear you.
Okay. Can we
Take
have
your
one
mask.
more-
Take
can we
your
have
mask.
one more person who disagrees? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you care that people can't understand you?
Okay, yes, I do. Yeah.
Well, I feel like, I guess I'm kind of more in the middle-ish kind of thing side, but I feel like there's so many people actively like working to take away what we're trying to accomplish. And these people are people in power, people who are trying to take away like rights to abortion, people who are trying to make it so women, but like if their names change that they can't vote, you know what I mean? Even if it's by marriage. And so there's just so many things working against us at the same time.
Okay, so let me go ahead and introduce our first panelist. You can also find some biographical information in your program. So Odelia Diratu is currently a student at Santa Rosa Junior College. She's majoring in social justice and ethnic studies. When she's not panicking over the news, she loves to crochet and binge watch TV.
Hello everybody, can you guys hear me? Hi! My name is Odelia Diratu. I'm the Gen Z panelist here today. A little bit about me is that I am currently 20 years old. I attend Santa Rosa Junior College. I am majoring in social justice and ethnic studies, as Leah has mentioned, and I am a Black or Melanesian Pacific Islander woman. And a lot of my work revolves around focusing on Black and Pacific Islander history, political activism, and community organizing. I also do some work with NBLP, Deep Democracy. A little disclaimer though, because we're a nonprofit, I'm not here representing them, I'm here representing myself. I don't want to break any 501c3 rules. But yeah, I was invited here by Kim Keller, who was a part of Indivisible. Shouts to Kim. And when she told me what this panel and what this event was going to be about, I instantly said yes. And I'm just really honored and I'm really excited to be around a lot of amazing women who genuinely care about protecting our rights and our freedoms. And I'm just thankful to be here in this space. So thank you for having me.
So our second panelist is Diana Walker. Diana is a performer, organizer, song leader, teacher, and community member from Sonoma County. She currently serves as DSA's mutual aid captain.
Hello. Thank you all so much for being here. My name, like she mentioned, is Diana Walker. I'm also known as Diana Dreams in my music work. Let's see, where do I start? So I have degrees in music. That's my area of study and expertise. I've performed music in over 6 countries, in over 6 languages, and I play something like 6 to 8 instruments. I've also written hundreds of songs, and I produce my own music. I also founded my own business in Santa Rosa a couple of years ago. I think it's important for me to say I am a woman of trans experience, and very proudly so. So I'm bringing a sort of different perspective, perhaps, than some of the other women on this panel. And what else is important to say? Oh yeah, I serve on the steering committee of Sonoma County DSA, and we are organizing people to put into practice socialist ideas into something that we can experience and feel and taste and enjoy together. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's good. Thanks so much for having me.
So Annabelle Garcia is a farm worker. She also does a lot of community work. She worked during COVID and during the wildfire period to support people in her community and help them know their rights. And she's done a lot of organizing in the community for the benefit of everyone. So she'll introduce herself.
Buenas tardes, un gusto de estar aquí con todos ustedes.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here with you all.
Soy nueva para ustedes. Es la primera vez que estoy aquí compartiendo.
This is the first time that I've done something like this, sharing about my own experience.
Hemos unido muchos compañeros, trabajadores del campo, limpiadores de casas, de todos los lugares para organizar y pelear por nuestros derechos.
We've united people a lot of workers from the field, a lot of folks that also do cleaning, organizing to better the conditions.
Y estamos viendo que nos están cerrando escuelas para nuestros hijos.
And one of the things that we're seeing right now is that they're closing down schools for our kids.
¿Y cuál es el futuro que nos espera?
And what's the future that we're moving into?
Vamos a necesitar en nuestra comunidad abogados, doctores, de todas las industrias. Necesitamos gente preparada para que vean por nosotros.
We're going to need a lot of people to unite with us, doctors, lawyers, people from the community to help us organize in the community.
Estaremos firmes hasta las victorias que logremos.
And we will stand strong in the victories that we will get to.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.
So Gabriel Cardenas from North Bay Jobs with Justice is doing the translation. Thank you, Gabriel. So our last panelist is Paula Fogarty. She's a retired biology teacher. She's a climate activist and she's an angry granny.
Thank you, and hooray for all the angry grannies here.
Raging grannies.
Yes.
Great grandmothers.
So I am from a very small town in Oklahoma up near the Panhandle. My mom taught 3rd grade, my dad taught science, and I watched how hard they worked every night grading papers and writing lesson plans, and I swore I would never become a teacher. You know how that worked out. So, that part of Oklahoma was quintessential Middle America. People were said to be pragmatic, down to earth, very smart. They were never the kind to be taken in by con man. And you know how that worked out. I want to share one memory that I had from my childhood that, to me, especially in the light of having RFK Jr. Somehow in charge of our health care, this memory stands out like there's a spotlight shining on it. I remember lining up with all the other little children to receive the first vaccine against polio. It was a Sagan vaccine, and as I recall, we got it on a little sugar cube that we ate. Some children weren't as lucky as I was. Some children had to clump around in heavy metal braces on their legs. Other children ended up in iron lungs. So when I got that vaccine, I remember how very, very relieved my parents were. It was a big deal. So I was in the whitest part of white Oklahoma. Even so, my family was very interested in other cultures, people of color, and of course the Native American tribes that lived in different parts of our state. I remember going to Indian expositions in Oklahoma City, like a giant powwow. It was really thrilling. Eventually my parents were recruited to teach in San Diego, and my world got considerably wider. I was actually able to study Spanish, French, and even Russian in my high school back in that day. We could study Russian. And we hosted an exchange student from the Netherlands for 1 entire year when I was a junior, and she's still like a sister to me. It helped wake me up to the history and culture and experiences and governments of people in other countries. Sometimes they had better ideas for how to meet their people's needs than we did. And sometimes they exercised brutal colonial power. So there were two sides to the coin, certainly. I remember a lot of experiences and bits of history that I lived through. The war in Vietnam, devastating assassinations in the 60s, the Civil Rights Movement, our fight for the Equal Rights Amendment, even though we lost. I remember the first Earth Day, exchanging letters with my dear high school friend who served in the Peace Corps in Brazil. Remember the Peace Corps? I think it's still there. Trump hasn't destroyed it utterly. Oh, and of course we had wonderful music. The Beatles, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Joan Baez. Oh, it was a great time for that. During all of this, I married. I had 3 sons. And of course, I became a biology teacher after all my vowing not to become a teacher. I am part of a lucky generation, even though we had some financial struggles, periods of unemployment, juggling bill payments. Still, we were able to buy a house back in the day when houses were affordable. We were able to send our 3 sons to college without breaking the bank. And now we have a comfortable retirement. Sometimes folks, I feel survivor's guilt when I think of how I live and my friends of my same age compared to what younger people people have to go through. I will tell you this, in terms of values, I greatly valued education, public schools, medical science, healthcare, scientific research, diversity, equal rights, public lands, and much more. Somehow I thought all of those values were held in high esteem universally in our country. And it was a rude awakening to find that wasn't the case. And so I thank God for this community that we all form, that believes in those things and will work and fight to bring them back.
So the group that put this, thank you, all four panelists, that put this together thought that it was very important to get some generational diversity onto the panel, because often we have stereotypes, oh, young people are not going to be interested, they're just looking at their phones, or old people are not helping with climate change. And none of them are really accurate, like most stereotypes. So the group that, from Indivisible, that formulated this whole event has decided to ask some questions of each panelist, and we'll go in the same order, youngest to oldest. So the first question, and we'll start with Odelia, is how are you feeling about the challenges facing our country? What advice do you have for other women living through these times?
Well, thank you for this question. Also, just another disclaimer, if you see me looking at my phone, yes, it's because I'm Gen Z, but I also need to look at some notes to remember, so please. But yeah, for the first part of the question, how I'm feeling about the challenges that are facing our country, I am not okay at all, to be very frank and honest. But I am really hopeful as someone who's had to grow up under 2 Trump terms, one during my childhood and now as an adult. It feels like a lot of these challenges are really inescapable, and it's really hard to cope with a lot of the time. But I do genuinely feel really hopeful because of the fact that I have grown up around other women my age, women in my friend groups, who have been extremely outraged about what is happening, who have become more politicized and recognizing the issues that we face as women, especially for my friends who are women of color, who are turning towards feminism and generally caring about our rights. And it makes me feel really hopeful for the type of resistance that we might see in the future. In terms of the second part of the question, any advice? This goes for everybody, but especially for my Gen Z folks out there. If you are not already a part of some organization or do not have any experience community organizing, please do so. Whatever organization that is, whether it's an organization that's doing work with unhoused people, migrant justice, whether it has to do with women's rights, whatever it is, please join them. I know that it is really hard to feel optimistic about our future right now, especially with the world being on fire, but organizing is a really great way to uplift your community. It's a really great way to uplift yourself. And I'm really lucky to have learned from experienced organizers, to have learned from student organizers who have done such amazing work with our community. And it makes me feel excited, it makes me feel inspired about the type of work that I want to be a part of, about the type of work that I want to see for myself and for my people. And it's just, again, another opportunity to feel more encouraged and more empowered about our future. And I want everyone to feel that right now. I want everyone to feel empowered and believe that we can generally create a better world for ourselves as women and for every person in our community. So, yeah.
So just to repeat the question, how are you feeling about the challenges facing our country, and what advice do you have for other women living through these times?
So my top line feeling is overwhelmed. I think the shock and awe has worked on me. And it feels important for me to also say, I feel like I'm being pulled in 2 or more directions at once, emotionally. On the one hand, I'm outraged, I'm afraid, I'm feeling some despair, to be quite honest, about the greatness of the task that feels like it's before us. And this is the best time in my life. I'm having the most fun that I've ever had. This is, and the material conditions that I live in are so privileged and so amazing. You know, I have a safe place to sleep. I have friends and a community that loves me. And I think it's really important for us to remember those precious things while we still have them. Excuse me. My advice is very simple. Get loud. Take up space. Thank you, yeah. Seriously, in this space too, this is space for us to be. You know, I feel like we don't talk about the fact that 6 years ago, the world kind of came to a pause. And I really see the time that we exist in now as a social ice age. The pandemic wiped out what little culture there was, especially in kind of semi-rural places like this. And it's up to us to kind of regrow all of the networks of support that need to be there for us to live full and complete lives. So there's a lot of stuff to do. I think community organizing is a really good way to do that. It's certainly a good outlet and a good way to study leadership. A good way to study how to take action. A good way to observe a lot of people doing a lot of different things and say, I want to try that. I want to try that. And I also just want to say, I think the biggest thing holding women back from taking positions of power and leadership is perfectionism. There is a lot of self-perfectionism within our community. We have not been allowed to make mistakes, to fail, and then to try again. And I see this with almost every woman that I know, and femme that I know. We are so critical of ourselves. I see this in myself too. If my eyeliner is very slightly smudged, I am very upset. Most of the time when I see another woman wearing eyeliner, I'm like, that looks amazing, you look so good. Try and apply some of that love that you have for other people right here. That's all I have to say.
How are you feeling about the challenges facing our country? What advice do you have for other women living through these times?
Pues nosotros hemos, experimentado que todos traemos la misma carga en los hombros, los ataques racistas, pero también estamos experimentando que hemos sido trabajadores esenciales, estamos siendo discriminados ahora, quieren sacarnos de donde hemos sembrado nuestras raíces.
We've all been carrying the same weight. We've gotten racist attacks. They've called us essential workers, but we're not getting the treatment we're supposed to.
Y sentimos que por esas raíces que hemos puesto, que son nuestros hijos, sido crecidos, educados en este país, queremos lo mismo para todos.
And through the sacrifice that we've made, we feel, and the roots that we've planted here, with our kids in this area, we feel that we hope that we get the right treatment, equal treatment, the same way as everybody else does.
Creo que la lucha es educar a nuestros hijos y enseñarles arte, levantar la voz, unirnos, porque no tenemos medical, porque la renta está muy cara, porque todo está pasando muy rápido.
the example that we want to set for our future is to lift up our voices and lift up our voices, enjoy the things and the small things in life, like art, and all of this is all happening very quick.
Creo que todos tenemos, o todas las mujeres, nos hemos unido a lugares de educarnos, de unirnos para salvarnos unos a otros.
We've been organizing and uniting to make sure that we're taking care of each other in this moment.
Todos tenemos miedo ante los ataques de los ricos.
We all have fear against the attacks of the rich.
Y mi apoyo a la comunidad es unirnos más.
And my advice to the community is that we unite.
Y la voz de las mujeres ha crecido en estos momentos que son tan difíciles y yo veo más mujeres unidas.
Our voices have been amplified in these times, and I'm seeing more women unite during this time.
So, in this past year, how have I been feeling about the challenges? Well, I would say it's been waves of grief. One wave after another all year long as more and more destruction occurred at the hands of our fearless leader. So when I think about the destruction of the institutions and the agencies of our government and the brutality of ICE, I think of the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And I would say here, hold on to the anger, maybe less acceptance, but that anger can help keep you going. Don't let it control you, you control it, but it is an important tool. I will say that I also have grieved the willful ignorance and purposeful destruction of our climate that supports all the life systems on our planet. So that's something else that has sent me into deep grief. But I'm going to say, I think we should add a sixth stage of grief, and I call it plodding. Doesn't sound very exciting, but it's so important because you just keep moving along. And you have to do that. You keep on moving. And when you do that, eventually you get somewhere. One of the things that we accomplish as we keep on plodding along is we're developing community. And that community may hold our salvation in the future. Remains to be seen. So, plod along. Go to a meeting. Go to a board of supervisors and stand there with a sign. Make a sign. Go to a protest. Go to a march. Talk to your neighbors about all of this. Help distribute food. Do whatever you can do. All of it counts. All of it comes together and helps. And remember, I think Greta Thunberg said this, and she really had it right. You don't need hope. You need action. And when you act, you will get hope. And it is an active, strong kind of hope. It's nothing namby-pamby and weak. It's the kind of hope we need to keep going. You have children, you have grandchildren, you have great-grandchildren. You do it for them, and you do it for the planet and for all the living things on this planet. Remember the 3.5%. We're going to get there. And remember Orban.
So we have a second question. I just want to say that we're getting some really excellent translation over here, so thank you for that, so that everybody can participate. So the second question, and we'll go in the same order, is, have you been engaged in resistance to MAGA? Resistance is a big theme today. If so, what are you learning? What are your strategies?
Well, to be very honest, not as much resistance as I want, and not as much resistance as I know that I have to engage with more. But one way that I have been, personally resisting against MAGA is by protecting and passing down Black, Indigenous, and Black Pacific Islander history. As a Black Pacific Islander, I had a conversation with one of my mentors and former professor, Stephanie Chang, and she talked about how being in higher education, being in academia, means that we get access to so many more resources that talk about our people and our community's history. And it is unfair that people who in our community who don't have access to higher education, who can't afford college, are not able to get this information. And so it's a responsibility for all of us that whatever resources that we come across, that we give it back to our people, and we give it back to our community. And so one thing that I have been doing is that I have like a Google document that has a list of videos and books and essays and so many other things that talk about Black and Indigenous and Pacific Islander history. Anytime that I see a member of my community who's interested in learning more, who isn't able to go to college for whatever reason that it is, I pass that resource right along to them. And they read it and we talk about it and we just have conversations around it, and it's so fulfilling to know that that is happening, especially in an administration that is doing book bans, that is getting rid of African American history classes, that is getting rid of gender studies, ethnic studies. Protecting these things are really important. And I also think that there are so many women in my community, women like Faith Bandler and Patricia Koroa, who were Black Indigenous activists that were anti-colonial, that were anti-imperial, that were anti-fascists. And I think about what do we learn from these women and what do we learn from these movements? What do we, what tactics can we learn from them and use to fight against the fascism that we are seeing right now? And to honor that is extremely important. To remember that is extremely important in a country that is trying to make us forget that history. So that is a form of resistance that I try to participate in.
So the question is, have you been engaged in resistance to MAGA? If so, what are you learning? What are your strategies?
Has anyone here heard of Sonoma County DSA? Yes? So I've been involved with them for about 9 months now, and I was very reticent at first, to be honest, to join. I was like, what is this? I don't really get it. What are we doing here? And over time, it became clear to me that it was kind of a sandbox for us to try different things in. And in particular, I was really drawn to mutual aid as a concept, as a practice, as something that is directly practical to my life and the lives of people around me. It's something that I think a lot of people don't understand, to be honest, or the only type of mutual aid that people are aware of is donating money to someone, especially kind of through social media. That's the popular form. It is so much more than that. We're doing community cleanups, we're doing craft fairs, we're doing mending circle where we come together, and you can bring your crocheting and do some crocheting with us. It's working on things with your hands and being in community with each other and holding space for each other and maybe singing a song or two if that's the vibe. So my perspective is we need more culture, we need more cultural spaces to come together around. And let's see, and I've been actively trying to make that happen. I've stopped waiting for somebody else to show up and do that. So I'm proud to lead the Mutual Aid Committee. I've been doing so for about 3 months now, and I do so not as a perfect person, not as someone who never makes mistakes, but what I'm really learning from this is I need more practice at asking for help and at receiving support. Those are the things that I'm primarily trying to improve in my organizing life right now, is I need to more often say, will you help me with this? Can I get some support with that? All of that stuff, and it's, I do have a tendency as a person to learn things the hard way. I have a pattern I've observed in myself of doing things and then thinking about them in that order, which has its problematic moments. But what I appreciate about that is I've learned a lot just by doing stuff, and I have real experience in doing that. So what I see working so far is taking very small, achievable goals, like I want to clean up that park, I want to cook a meal for 25 people, and then figure out how to make it happen. That's it. And then if you learn something along that path, or if you want to do it again, hopefully you do, then take another small, achievable action and do that. That's it. That's the process. There's nothing else really to it. Our organizing is not complicated. Sometimes some of the people that I work with and respect say that it's just normal people stuff. And I like that framing of it. It's just stuff that we need to do to build the world that we want to be in.
So Annabelle, how have you been engaged in resistance to MAGA? If so, what are you learning? What are your strategies?
Pues nosotros, bueno, cuando yo era niña yo veía que mi papá se unía con todos los vecinos, platicaba.
When I was younger, I saw how my dad used to organize with our neighbors.
Y nosotros ayudábamos en el trabajo de la tierra para tener comida.
And we would help out working the land to have food.
Éramos niños, muchos primos que tenían y vecinitos.
It was a lot of us. We were very young. It was a lot of me and my cousins.
Lo que aprendimos fue la unión.
What we learned was unity.
Y ahora lo que hemos estado practicando es salir a lugares a invitar compañeros para el 1 de mayo. Queremos levantar nuestra voz.
And now one of the ways that we're organizing is going out to the community and inviting other folks to May 1st, International Workers' Day, so we can lift up our voices.
Queremos enseñar el poder de la comunidad, que la comunidad necesita maestros, necesita que esos ricos que no pagan impuestos, paguen sus impuestos para las escuelas, para los jóvenes.
We want to show oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You know that? We want to show how strong our community is, and we want to show the rich how strong we are as well. And we want to tax the rich so they can start paying their fair share of taxes.
Estamos organizando mucha comunidad de mujeres trabajadoras del campo.
We're organizing a lot of workers, especially a lot of women who are working out in the field.
Y queremos que ellos traigan sus hijos y los enseñen como nosotros fuimos enseñados.
And we want them to bring their daughters, their sons, so they can show them how to organize the same way we were taught to organize.
Que en el futuro ellos sean los que levanten la voz por más derechos, aunque sabemos que ahorita está muy difícil nuestra lucha. para el respeto.
And in the future, that they're the ones leading this fight for equality and a voice for our community.
Lo que queremos es saber
What we want to do is we want to know
si todos estamos juntos en la lucha del respeto y el apoyo mutuo en comunidad.
we want to know if we're all united in it.
Queremos que todos apoyen, no preguntarse la unión.
Yeah. She wants to be sure that all of us were all united in this movement. Yeah.
A veces lo que trabajamos, lo que guardamos, no encontramos a veces la manera de expresarlo hasta que nos unimos juntos y nos da ese valor.
Sometimes it takes moments like this for us to really express how we're really feeling, and that's when we have the courage to speak out against what's going on. And sometimes it takes us being in community and together, united, to do that.
Y muchos compañeras y compañeros han expresado esa necesidad de estar.
And a lot of folks that we organize have also expressed the want to be in spaces where they can speak up.
El respeto
About respect.
por la vida,
Respect for their lives.
porque estamos como con un pie en el cuello con tanta renta, todo ha subido.
Because things are really tough and we feel like there's a boot in our neck because of the cost of living that keeps going up.
Esperemos que esto sea una marcha inolvidable
We hope this march on May 1st is going to be an unforgettable one.
y que no haya represalias con tanto miedo que están hablando de emigración.
And we hope there's no retaliation, considering all the fear around immigration issues.
Queremos un cambio para nuestros hijos,
We want to change for our kids.
que su mente esté fuerte, que sus papás están seguros con trabajo.
That their minds are strong and also that their parents have stable work.
Esperemos estar todos bien. Gracias.
We hope we all do better, and thank you.
First, I'll mention that I do work on climate issues every week. I'm together with some other people, and we have a quick, easy way you can do that. If you want to know about it, let me know later on. But we do believe that democracy and a stable climate go together. If you do a little thought experiment and think about it, you'll start to see that pretty clearly. So what do I do besides that? I go to protests, I make signs, I organize sign-making get-togethers, let me know if you're interested. And I go to meetings, I work on controlling my response to MAGA when we do meet up with those people, those counter-protesters. I am working on being civil, and it's not always easy. So I try to remember the gestures and the words I don't want to use. So the other thing is getting together with other people and brainstorming responses. When I look at things like some of the brilliant signs that are out there, and I look at the handmaids, oh, amazing. I mean, it just pierces you to see those people doing that. Somebody thought to do that. It was an idea. They worked on it, they worked it out, they made it happen. We need more ideas like that. I think there are some brilliant ones that have come along in Petaluma and Sonoma, where people are dressed all in black, and each one holding a sign that is one aspect of an autocracy. And then the next demonstration, they were dressed in yellow, and each one had a sign of hope. That's brilliant. We can do that. We can come up with things like that. So I encourage everyone to brainstorm and to get going. And I remind you, we are here in Indivisible. We can support you and your efforts in that regard. A friend who's here today, by the way, gave me a refrigerator magnet that said, "It was the worst of times, it was the worst of times." But what I want to say is, even in these times, if you're working on this, you will have moments of joy.
So we have some joy planned for after a break and a little bit for before in a minute. But I want to just encourage you to stay. There's a raffle after the break, thanks to Molly. And I also want to say that the woman who made an eloquent argument to agree that we will see women's rights in our lifetime is actually Molly Murphy McGregor. She is a very well-known feminist historian, and she's going to inspire us after the break with a little group of women from our history, our shared history, who we really need to know about, and we need to build on what they did. So I really encourage you to stay. And then we thought that it's not a gathering of the resistance unless we have a little bit of music. So Diana agreed to lead us in a song, and the lyrics are in your program.
Yeah. A brief note. To me, I think it's really important how we sing together if we're going to sing. And my suggestion is to put some of the energy of your heart into the singing that we do together. The topic of this first song, Ashes and Smoke, in my opinion, is actually something that, Paula, you were noting on earlier. It's about grief and what happens when we grieve. And so I'm going to teach this song to y'all, and we can sing it together. I'm going to go line by line, so we'll pick it up over time. It's not difficult, I promise. And if you don't feel comfortable participating, no worries. Feel free to participate in whatever way feels right to you. And our thought was, let's sing this a few times together once we get going, and then let's also kind of leave singing together. So we'll kind of trickle out whenever you kind of feel like you want to get some refreshments and hang out in the lobby for a little while. All right, here's the first line of the song. We have been burned by the fire. That's line one. Let's hear it again. We have been burned by the fire. Sounds beautiful. And we are ashes, ashes and smoke. And we are ashes, ashes and smoke. Let's do those two lines together. We have been burned. We have been burned by the fire. And we are ashes, ashes and smoke. Here's the third line. And we will rise higher and higher. And we will rise higher and higher. On the wings of compassion, justice and hope. On the wings of compassion, justice and hope. Let's do the last two lines, and we will rise. And we will rise higher We have been burned, burned by the fire, and we are ashes, ashes and smoke, and we will rise higher and higher on the wings of compassion, justice and hope. We have been burned, burned by the fire, and we are ashes, ashes and smoke, and we will rise higher and higher on the wings of compassion, justice and hope. So feel free to leave at any time if you want. We can keep singing together. We have been burned, burned by the fire, and we are ashes, ashes and smoke, and we will rise higher and higher on the wings of compassion, justice and hope.
Well, I just want everybody to know that all of the... Yes, thank you. So often the thanks happen at the end and not everybody hears them, so I want to really thank the Unitarian Universalists for giving us this beautiful space. Everything that they do in the community. And I also want to thank the core committee for the community conversations of Indivisible, Kimberly, Elaine, Carrie, Diane, Kelly, Dave, and Melissa, who worked really hard on this. It's been a lot of hours, and we're still working together. So I have the honor to introduce somebody who I actually knew about a long time ago because I taught women's history. And anybody who taught women's history in the 1990s knew about the National Women's History Project, which Molly Murphy McGregor helped found, and she'll tell you a little bit about herself. She was a teacher. It's now called the National Women's History Alliance, and among the wonderful work that they've done, which she can talk more about, is that because of her work and the work of others like her, in 1987 there was a joint congressional resolution to celebrate Women's History Month, which made a huge difference, I have to tell you, in my teaching and a lot of other people. So Molly's also just a lot of fun, and she's going to take over from here.
Okay, here I go. I know that the person doing the video is really happy to understand that I'm going to stand behind here because in our rehearsal I said, oh, I'm a teacher. I'll probably be moving throughout the crowd. And it kind of looked like, I thought, oh no, I can't do that to another person who's so committed to what we're doing. So I want to say a little bit about myself that you won't read in most biographies, because instead you'll read that I was the co-founder of the National Women's History Project, the National Women's History Project, which started in Sonoma County, California, and you're going to see, maybe I can even show you right now. Yeah, it started in Sonoma County, California, and you would think, because I went on to become a teacher of women's history and a promoter and travel throughout the country in promoting women's history, you'd think that, oh, well, when Molly was a little girl, she grew up thinking that she was going to tell the world about women's history. But let's be real. I'm the youngest of 9 children. My family spreads 2 generations, so my sisters were old enough to have children when I was born. My poor mother. Anyway, I never, ever considered college. It wasn't even a word that came up. I come from, although my father ran a small business, his background was totally working class and the people. In my family, there was Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Rod, and they were real close together. And then there was the devil and Richard Nixon, and there was no. So that's the family I came of age in. I went to Catholic school for 9 years, and then I went to public school and had nothing but fun in high school. My high school experience was social. Because I didn't need it to be anything else. I was going to get married, have lots of kids, and live happily ever after, because I thought that that's what every woman did. That's what was working out in my family. So so to say that I didn't graduate top of my class is an understatement, but I worked at the Bank of America right out of college because I was going to be working until my prince came along and took care of me for the rest of my life, right? Because that's why, well, you men, you might not know this, but that's why you were born, to take care of us for the rest of our life. Anyway, I'm working at the Bank of America with these old people. My God, they were 30. All they just talked about their husbands and their kids and stuff. And I discovered that I was making only 75% of what a young man was making who was doing the same work, hired the same day. So when I approached the bank manager in my naiveness, and trust me, I was naive, this has been a terrible mistake. Dollar signs danced in my head. I thought, oh, okay. But he informed me that no, Ed was on a training program. And so I said, well, sign me up for a training program. And he looked at me like in disbelief. And he said, Molly, do you think people want to walk into a bank and see women in positions of authority? And I was so taken back. I really didn't even know the word patriarchy or sexism or condescension. I didn't know any of that, but I did know the word stupid. And I didn't know that I had gone to Catholic school. If he wants to see women in authority, come join the nuns. So luckily, I was born in California. I've lived in California all my life, and I was able to go to the community college and make an atone for the fact that I had so much fun in high school. But what college did for me, it lit something inside me that I hadn't ever even thought about before. I had no idea. I was a white, privileged girl that grew up in a small, kind of very rural town, and I could not believe how uninformed, how ignorant I was about the world and about how the world was. So my 2 years of community college just set me on fire. I thought, okay, I'm going to become a teacher. I am going to encourage kids to ask questions I never thought about asking. They don't have to believe what I believe. Remember, the Vietnam War is now raging on. So it was a huge time in our history. So in my second year of teaching, I'm a young social studies teacher, and you know they're supposed to know everything because teachers are supposed to know everything. My second year of teaching, one of my students says to me, Mrs. Obar, because at the time I was married, Mrs. Obar, what is the women's movement? Well, it was 1972. In 1972, Shirley Chisholm ran for president of the United States. Barbara Jordan was elected as the first black person from a southern state since Reconstruction. Ms. Magazine was published, which is where this question came from, by the way. They began working on Title IX. 1972 was a banner year in women's history and in women's lives. And I was a second-year social studies teacher, and I didn't have a clue what this kid was asking me. So I looked at him, I paused, I tried to look as intelligent as I've ever looked, and said, what a good question. Because the question always determines the answer. And so what we did is we divided up into groups and we looked at the women's movement from the perspective of politics, religion, the family, society. I asked them to, in their groups, come up with 5 really good questions, and I hurried home to my one book, one chapter on the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848 that I had completely outlined in yellow. I received straight A's in history, and yet I had no connection to these women who, because in 1848 they gathered at that Women's Rights Convention, I was now a married woman able to teach high school. And yet, I had no idea the debt I owed them. I had, or my mother. I mean, my mother was just my mother, of course. She raised 9 children and kept us all together. It's just an easy thing to do, right? So if there was a moment when I woke and I embraced being woke, that was the beginning of it. I knew so little that when I went back to the classroom, I admitted to the kids, I said, you know, when you asked that question, I really didn't know the answer. I said, so from now on, as we go through our books, we're going to ask new questions. Whatever chronology it is, did this event impact men and women differently? Or did it impact people of different cultures differently? And knowing how little I knew, I left teaching to come to Sonoma State and get involved in women's studies, which is why I got involved with the Commission on the Status of Women. And I'm going to move through this really quickly because I really do want to allow time at the end for questions. So if I talk about these women too quickly, don't worry, you can have a copy of this PowerPoint if you want it. Okay, the first one is in 1978, we had our first Women's History Parade. Oh, I'm the one that has to move this. Okay. Our Women's History Parade, this is Sonoma County, this is Santa Rosa celebrating it, and it was Women's History Week. And then it went on to the Cloverdale Color Guard coming down and carrying the flag, which was so important because, remember, at the beginning, people were afraid of us. Women's history? What does that mean? You hate men? You know, what does that mean? You hate America? You know, so for them to come down and carry the flag was just essential. And these are kids doing their own Women's History Parade, dressing up as women and giving speeches. Okay, this is President Carter, who issued the very first message in 1980. I actually received a call from the White House asking for Molly McGregor. I put them on hold because I'd never been called from the White House before. But anyway, it was President Carter, it was Sarah Weddington calling to say that Carter was going to issue this resolution. Having a national resolution for Women's History Week changed everything. And this is when we really began to write women back into history on the national level. Like academics have had it, but we're talking about us, organizers, people who can bring forth extraordinary power in their own community because of what women have done. But you can't do that unless you know. So I'm going to start with a group of women. There she is. I wanted to start with her. I don't see any words, so I might have to make them up. Oh, here she is. This is Elizabeth Jennings Graham. I thought you all would be able to see this too. But anyway, Elizabeth Jennings Graham in 1854 refused to move to the back of the bus. And the reason I included her in this presentation is because I wanted you to understand how long it's been. You brilliant women talked about it today, that it's steps, it's plotting, it's taking its time. So I wanted to start with her. I'm going to move through it really pretty quickly. This is Alice Paul, and the reason I wanted to include her is I wanted to remind you of what people went through in terms of even being force-fed in order for us to finally secure the vote. And Polly Murray, if you don't know Polly Murray, of all the women I'm going to talk about today, please Google Polly Murray. She is the most extraordinary woman of the 20th century that gets no credit, and she hits every box you can think of in terms of trans, gay, anyway, all the boxes. And this brilliant lawyer. Okay. This is Maybelle, and the reason that she gets credit often is because she worked in the suffrage parade. But more than that, she worked to end the Chinese Exclusion Act. And that's what I want to go through. These women who worked to, it shows up here. I wonder why it didn't show up there. Let me see. Okay, there you go. Okay. These are the women, a whole array starting over the 100 years of women who refused to move to the back of the bus. We learned about Rosa Parks because of media, right? But it's a long-going struggle. Here, this is a woman, a military woman, and she's still kicked off the bus. This is Colette Corbett, who the same year that Rosa Parks refused to go to the back of the bus, so did she. But she was 15, she was a kid, and so instead, Rosa Parks stepped forward to take the leadership of the Montgomery bus boycott. This is a woman named Ada Deer who worked to end Indian tribal termination from the government. And I'm going to say these very quickly because I want you to know, here's Fannie Lou Hamer, who changed the whole way the Democratic Party ended up doing their conventions, who was beat within a minute of her life in prison, and it never stopped her for a second. This woman is Viola Lewis, who was a mother of 5, and with her husband's great support and permission, went to Mississippi to register people to vote, and the Klan killed her. This woman, let me say her name right, Gloria Aliras, she was part of the Brown Berets, but then she thought, hey, these guys are a little bit, sexist, and started her own organization. So I guess I have to click through it faster than I thought. I don't know many of these women. I looked them up because I can't tell you the feeling and joy and excitement I feel for this generation. This woman who is not only an astronaut, but then she went on to form an organization for women. And this is Heather, who was killed at Charlottesville by some neo-Nazi fanatic, but she was there to speak for love and goodness. This is a Muslim woman who is Palestinian and who's trying to work throughout the whole country to unify Jews and Palestinians and people and women and men together. And then this is the last one of Renee, who was just killed by ICE in Minnesota. Okay, there's so much more I could say about any of these women, and as I said, it's a PowerPoint. It really does have the descriptions of what they did over here. Any one of you are welcome to take a copy of it. But I wanted to stop sooner than later because I wanted to ask you if you have questions. What is the question that you have about women's history? Because I want to let you know that we're part of all these women. These women are all part of us. Their courage, their determination is what sustains us and keeps us going. So, does anybody have any questions before we do the raffle?
What do you think is today's largest obstacle to women unifying politically for change?
Well, someone said it up here when we expect each other to be perfect. That's one of the things. We have to be forgiving. We have to not hold grudges. I know there's no one in this room that's ever been disappointed by something done to them, but you need to get over it. We need to talk. The more we talk, the more we realize that our lives are so connected. Like if I could have talked about these women today, we would have had time to show how they're part of your life. My time is up, so let's do the raffle, and then maybe if there's any time left, we'll do questions. How's that? Okay?
And we're going to have breakout discussions too, so there'll be opportunities.
Should we do the raffle first? Oh, I probably should have said, as you did, that although I'm support staff now, I was the director of the National History Project and then Alliance for 46 years. I stepped down because I wanted younger people to step up. Unfortunately, you can't step up without money. So right now, we're kind of an all-volunteer organization. All of you are invited to join us at any time. But what I'm saying today is about Molly Murphy McGregor. It's not necessarily about the National Women's History Alliance, because we know if they can come after us, they will. Okay, so would somebody like to draw a number? I'll do it. Let me tell you what you're going to win. And this is a lesson. Okay, when Hillary Clinton ran for President of the United States, oh, I didn't grab the right one. When Hillary Clinton ran for President of the United States, we published a magazine that night congratulating her on being the first President of the United States. Obviously, those 1,500 magazines didn't get distributed. This magazine is a revision of instead celebrating the fact that she was the first woman nominated by a major Democratic party. And the person that now has this magazine is
Number 21.
There you go. Sure. There you go. This is our puzzle. Those of you that have kids, you might be most interested in this, but on the back, there's the names of all the women that are in here, plus it makes it into a little box so you don't have to lose all the pieces. So this is for
Number 65.
Okay. You're so welcome. And there are magazines that were on the table out there. I welcome you to take all of them. This year's theme, you'll see, really focuses on the environment. Every year there was a different theme. And the very last item that I would like to present is Winning the Vote, the Triumph of the American Women's Suffrage Movement. This is the Bible of the suffrage movement, and now it's actually 21 years old, but trust me, it's so well illustrated with images, pro and con of what happened with suffrage, and state by state. If you go through this book, by the time you're finished, you'll feel that you knew these women. They were your pals, and they would have been. And this treasure goes to
Number 8.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Please contact, you can email me at any time. My email is N as in national, W as in women, H as in history, P as in project, 1980@gmail.com, because the National Women's History Project was formed in 1980. If that doesn't work, you can Google me. Don't believe all you read about me. There were much more interesting things they could have said. But anyway, thank you all. Thank you all very much.
So we can't have all these great speakers and then not let you talk. So our next effort is to ask people to look for people near you, but maybe not people who look that much like you, like maybe cross a generation or cross an aisle or something, and form groups of maybe 3, 4, 5 people. And the real theme of this whole event is women's resistance. So we want to pose a question to have you work on in small groups, and then we'd really like you to share your really great ideas. So the question is, how might we resist and organize against Trump's war on women creatively and effectively? I'll just repeat it, and the speakers on the panel are going to be available if you wanted to pull them into your group, because we see how creative they are. How might we resist and organize against Trump's war on women creatively and effectively? And indivisible organizers are going to give you paper and markers, and you'll have actually a nice little bit of time.
10 minutes.
10 minutes to kind of talk about your ideas, and then we'll share them. Not a lot, but maybe you have some ideas. So